Before Africa was divided by foreign hands, it was a continent of kingdoms, trade routes, empires, and rich civilizations. But in the late 19th century, a storm was brewing in Europe, one that would forever change Africa's fate.
On the 15th of November in 1884, Europe met in Berlin to divide and share Africa amongst themselves. Known famously as the Berlin Conference, this singular act gave birth to an accidental situation where the richest continent in the world was broken into bits and their sovereignty and control shared between some of the European and Western nations. They took absolute control of the affairs of a continent and their natural resources, without due regard to the affairs of the owners of a continent where they discovered such riches. It also accounted for a situation where the continent lost its originality, sovereignty, and natural values to the whims of the invaders who conquered it mentally through subjugation, coercion, and brutality. Their success was made easy by the unwillingness of the leaders of the various tribes and kingdoms of the world's richest continent to work together in defense of their values and lives. The weak-mindedness of many of our so-called leaders allowed the colonizers to lead them by the nose while they live in subservience. They were on most occasions used as weapons, or rather a weapon against their people. The brave among them that stood against those colonial monsters were dealt with brutally, using our people to carry out their nefarious deeds. Africa, with a population of over 1.5 billion people, were divided into 54 nations that were meant to be independent of each other, but must remain under the influence and coercion of their Western colonizers, even after independence, and so it remained. However, countries like India, with a population of over 1.4 billion people, as well as China with similar population, are fledgling independent nations that were not divided by anybody, but rather allowed to run their affairs the way they deem fit. The question is, why was Africa divided and not given similar opportunity? For centuries before and after the Berlin Conference, Africa remains the milking cow of the world, with our human and natural resources acquired and utilized at will by the West and other forces to build their own world and maintain their exclusive lifestyle at the peril of Africans whose lives and wealth are mortgaged, exploited, and subjugated. It has continued endlessly, and the most appalling and regrettable attribute to this is the ever-willing partnership and subservient collaboration of our leaders, who accede to their every whim and sin against our own welfare, sovereignty, and mutual interests. This evil continues to exist despite the efforts of genuine African leaders whose ideas and struggles at unifying the continent and aligning it along global trends have been often thwarted by some of the Western powers and some of our own leaders getting killed in the process. Despite this, the call has remained. African children have continued to struggle. They've continued to cry out. Calls have continued to grow. And lately, Africa's youngest generation of leaders have initiated a situation that echoed that call loudly. Taking it away from politics and our useless politicians Burkina Faso, Mali, and Niger decided that we as Africans are tired of the seemingly endless cycle of inhuman exploitation that exists between us, the continent, and the West, particularly those people that were formerly our colonizers. Unfortunately, their affairs are promoted by our own leaders, selfish political leaders who remain buried in a subservient relationship with these people who never saw anything good in us and about us, except to continue harnessing our riches without our permission. These young military leaders have continued to echo the calls and activities of many joining African leaders who carried African issues on their backs over the years. Leaders like former President of South Africa, Thabo Mbeki, who was one of the main architects of the African Renaissance and peer review projects that were rendered very weak by Western coercion. Muammar Gaddafi, that wanted the United States of Africa modeled along the structures of the United States of America, where 50 semi-autonomous states, each with their own individual flag and unique identities, are brought together under one powerful flag and nationalism, led by one elected president whose influence and powers are regulated and managed by the Constitution and the judiciary. Unfortunately, Muammar Gaddafi was killed because of his endeavor by the so-called West. The unity and oneness of a continent have always been echoed and were echoed in the past by many of our Pan-African martyrs and leaders like Kwame Nkrumah, Nelson Mandela, Patrice Lumumba, Julius Nyerere, Kenneth Kaunda, Thomas Sankara, and many others. Imagine a united Africa structured along the system of America, with our human and natural resources and wealth and capacity allowed for us to use and given to us to improve our lives. Africa will surely and finally arrive. To end, by the year 2050, Africa will have the largest population in the world. Already, with the fastest growing youth population, it is impossible to continue holding the continent back because time and human nature are on her side. With the emergence of Ibrahim Traore and other young dynamic African leaders like him, the time has finally arrived for a change of mental approach to the affairs of the continent, from subservience, submissiveness, to freedom and equal rights. It now behoves the emergent African youth to fulfill the call of our martyrs who were killed for standing up for us. Traore cannot be allowed to be yet another story, but a beginning of the realization of a cause that our heroes died for. The right time is now. It is finally here. Luckily, some of our more experienced leaders are beginning to embrace the new reality. Presidents like Cyril Ramaphosa of South Africa, Netumbo Nandi Ndaitwah of Namibia, Tuma Boko of Botswana, Bassirou Diomaye Faye of Senegal, Hakainde Hichilema of Zambia, John Mahama of Ghana, as well as other opposition politicians like Peter Obi of Nigeria and Julius Malema of South Africa, and many others. The time to go to work is now. Let us not allow the momentum to die, but rather increase the pace, increase the call. Let us change Africa beginning from today. Let us know what you think. But before we go, please subscribe to our channel. We are relatively new. This is only our fourth content. Like so that YouTube will send you our next content. Help us to share to get others to speed. Comment and we will surely get back to you. Until then, do not fail to stand up to who you are and what you believe in. Always. We are the Renaissance Multimedia. We are here to empower tomorrow through the power of history and knowledge. God bless you. Nkosi Sikelele Africa.
Thousands rallied in Burkina